Welcome to The Alignment Show, featuring conversations with folks who have taken steps to identify their highest values and align their lives around them. Time on this earth is not unlimited, and you may be seeking to make sure you spend your time on things that matter to you. These conversations will encourage you and support you in doing so. Now, let's meet this week's guest on The Alignment Show. And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time it might be in your part of the world. Welcome once again to The Alignment Show. My name is Don King, and I will be your host this week as every week. Glad to have you with us. We have a fantastic guest today that I've been having the privilege of getting to know over the last few months. Before we get to that, I want to remind you of our sponsors. A regular sponsor is the Go Giver Success Alliance, and I've got the URL for that on the screen. For those of you who are on audio only, you can find out more at donking.com. That's Don with a double N, DONNKING.com/go-giver. You see, it's based on The Go Giver, the book by John David Mann and Bob Berg. There is a community around these concepts, and it's a fantastic community for a very low monthly fee. You are involved in a supportive, encouraging community made up of people who have achieved their goals in life, and they are all about helping each other. There's free trainings each month, well, included trainings. It doesn't cost anything to check it out, so go take a look at the Go Giver Success Alliance. Also, buy my books. Yeah, I'm an author, and I've got a couple out right now. There's at least 3 more planned. You will want to keep up with those to go along with what the Confidence Cultivator is about, with what the Alignment Show is about. We help you to live your values so you can value your life. You can find out more about that at donking.com, DONNKING.com/books. And with that taken care of, then I'm looking forward to this conversation. I've had many conversations with Vince over the last few months, and there's always new stuff to learn. Let me tell you a little bit about his background, and then I also want to tell you how I've gotten to know him. Now, Vince Vawter is a longtime newspaper person. He has retired, but he's worked every bit of newspapering, from writing obituaries up to and including being president and publisher of a major daily newspaper. Now, when I got to know him, he's already retired, as I said, but he's also written 3 books, one of which was a Newbery Award winner. And as we'll talk about, writing books is not very much like writing for a newspaper. He farms around here. It's interesting to me how he wound up in our little community in the foothills of the Smoky Mountains. That's where I met him, and ran into him at the Maryville Writers Group, I think we're calling ourselves, Blount County Writers Group. There's a surprising number of writers in our little town. And so the more I hear about Vince and his journey, the more I thought this is something that our audience needs to hear. So I'm glad to bring on with us this week Vince Vawter. Vince, welcome to the Alignment Show.
Thank you very much, Don. And I want to say right off, your colorful shirts always put my plain Janes to shame. So
Oh my goodness! Well,
I'm sorry I'm so plain looking.
Yeah, no, it makes more sense, actually. I go for comfort, and so all these Hawaiian shirts, it's just because of the comfort factor. I credit my wife with picking out the ones that look decent, so
Good.
that's her work there.
Good.
Oh my goodness! Well, there's so much for us to talk about, Vince, and we could easily slop into reminiscing about how newspapers used to be.
Right.
I do want to dig into that background a bit because it forms the context for a lot of what you have written about in your books.
Right.
You started at a newspaper after having been a paper boy, as we used to call them. I don't know if anybody ever really delivers newspapers like that anymore, but for folks,
I don't think they do.
Yeah, we remember the paper boy who would ride around on the bicycle and throw the paper up on the front porch. Not all of those people went to work in newspapers, though.
Right. Right.
So, how did you get started going from throwing newspapers to creating newspapers?
Well, I think I should say first that um, my only experience in throwing newspapers, in being a paper boy, was exactly like I told in my first story. I substituted for 1 month on a friend's paper route, and the reason I had to is because I felt like I owed it to him because I busted his lip with one of my fastballs. So I didn't want to do it, but I felt like I had to, and so that's how I started throwing newspapers for only 1 month when I was 11 years old.
Okay.
And that's where Paperboy comes from.
Okay. Okay. So, the newspaper work, was that inspired by? Let me give a quick background here. Paperboy is the first book in the trilogy,
Right.
and that is the Newbery Award winner.
Mhm.
It is a novel, but it is, I guess we would say, strongly autobiographical. There are a lot of things in the book that happen to you in real life, but not everything. And so, I the what I would think of as the mentor character,
Right.
was was he a real person or a combination of people? Because in the books, I think he's the one who got Victor into newspapering. Am I right about that?
Right. Uh, he is the only person in my book who is not a real person, who is completely fictional. The first draft I wrote of the book, Mr. Spiro was not in there, and and I could tell that something was missing, and so I added Mr. Spiro, and that's what makes it fiction. Yes. Hmm.
Okay, okay. Otherwise, it would be close to being a memoir, if not exactly a memoir.
Very close. Yes. Hmm.
Okay, okay. So that leaves open the question then, because you took a little different route than Victor did in getting into newspapering. So what led to that first newspaper work?
Well, when I was growing up, I had a very bad stutter.
Mhm.
And while I still do stutter, um, when I was a child, it was very bad. I couldn't say my name. I really had a lot of problems. So I found out I was a fairly good athlete. So the first college I went to was LSU purely to play baseball. I thought the only way I could make it in the world was as a baseball player,
Mhm.
but because I couldn't talk. Uh, so so then I got to LSU and I saw my first 100-mile-an-hour fastball, and I decided I better learn to do something else. And and as naive as I was, I said, "Okay, I can't talk. I better learn how to write." Not knowing that when you're in the newspaper business, you have to talk much more than you write. So that's how I got into it.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm gonna real quickly trot down a side path here. We started talking about this a little bit the other day, and I'm not sure we finished it. When I was in the newspaper business, I irritated my editors because I really hated talking to people on the telephone. I would hop in the car and drive across town to talk to somebody that I could have taken care of with a 5 minute telephone call.
Right.
I'm curious, did because obviously you had to do a lot of telephone work, you had to do a lot of talking with people.
Mhm.
With the stutter, which was harder, telephone or in person?
Uh, I think the telephone was always much harder. Uh, I started out writing sports, and I would cover a ball game on Friday night. Uh, and they would say, well, just call the story in. Well, I couldn't call a story in. So I would jump in my car, and I don't know why I didn't get 100 speeding tickets. I would fly back to the newspaper. Uh, while I was driving, though, I would write my story in my head almost, and then I would get in the newsroom and I could bang it out in 10 or 15 minutes. So it was just kind of my process.
Mm.
And I'm just surprised I lived to tell about it, because I did some I did some speeding on some back roads.
Yeah, yeah. That was, I know you worked for the Memphis Press Scimitar, which sadly is no longer around.
Right.
What was, did you start as a sports writer at the Press Scimitar, or was it one of the community papers around
I started as a sports writer at the Pine Bluff, Arkansas
there?
commercial, and it was a, a smaller newspaper. I think we had a 3-person sports staff, and it did teach me a lot, though. I did everything. I wrote, I worked on the desk. It was a good start. The reason I couldn't do it for very long, though, because if you have ever talked to a losing coach at the end of a ball game and you want to ask him some questions and you start stuttering, and he's liable to just walk out of the room. He doesn't want to talk to you, and so I had to change that. And so I went to the copy desk, and I found out I was, I could be a good journalist there, and I just rose from there.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
Let's go to a parallel set of questions here for a bit. Obviously, we've been talking about how stuttering affected you as a young man. I'm going to address the audience directly here for just a moment, folks. Honestly, I didn't realize that Vince had wrestled with stuttering or still wrestles with it. I picked up Paperboy because I was interested in the books that the other people in the Blount County Writers Group had written. And it was only then that I found out about this. And so, in subsequent conversations, one of the things Vince said to me was the thing that causes most stuttering, and I may be misrepresenting the quote here, Vince, so feel free to correct me. The thing that causes most stuttering is trying not to stutter. And that's one of the things I'm thinking here on the alignment show, that I see that principle applying to so much of life. Imposter syndrome, for example,
Right, right,
just all of this kind of thing. So, stuttering is something that is a lifelong thing. When I first heard you talk, I just thought that this is a good old Southern man. That's his pattern of speaking. How did you, I don't want to say how did you get over it? It's not something to get over, it's something
right,
to incorporate.
right. Uh, I I think I think I should explain now what I call my stuttering manifesto. It's got 3 parts, and that is, uh, and I'm going to write them down here. Stuttering is not cured. Stuttering is overcome. The second one is, stuttering is what we do when we try not to stutter. I truly believe that. And then the third part of the manifesto is, fluency is not all it's cracked up to be. I know a lot of people who are very fluent and they don't say one thing. So, so, that's my manifesto. And um, it's taken me a long time to come to that. I did a lot of self therapy. I did some precision fluency shaping, and I did work hard on my speech. But as I went along, my goal changed from total fluency into trying to find my voice. and
Mm.
my voice is one that stutters. And you know, I try to overcome it. I know it's always going to be there, though.
Yeah, yeah. Now this, I think this is a great example, I guess I would say, for all of us in life. Now, I've been experiencing as someone who's getting older, getting to a point of not caring that much what other people think.
Exactly.
So that was that part of it for you.
Yes, it was. You know, I'm 77 years old now, and I kind of am who I am. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, take it or leave it. You know, I don't try to impress anymore.
Mm-hmm.
As a child, it's so confusing and so frustrating. You think there's nothing wrong with you. You think you're just as smart and you're like everybody else, but you just can't talk right. And and it's so confusing. And then and a speech therapy long ago was all about you had to find fluency. You have to find fluency. You have to be fluent. You, lesson after lesson, week after week, work, work, work. And now speech therapy has come around to more of just be who you are, look for acceptance, and really don't worry about anything else. It
Mm-hmm.
it it it's kind of almost like Zen. If you if you are very conscious of trying not to stutter, you probably will stutter. So just forget about it. And that's what I found worked for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It goes along with, I'm not a speech therapist, but a speech trainer, I guess you would say.
Right. Yeah.
It's been a good part of my career helping other people speak effectively. And that's one of the, it's what we would call green monkey syndrome. You know, if I tell you don't think about a green monkey, get that green monkey out of your head, you can't think about anything else.
Right.
You think about a pink elephant instead, the green monkey's gone. And so you can't simply not think about stuttering. Is there something that you learn to focus on to where you can truly forget about the stuttering?
Um, I think I'm going to share my story with you now. Uh, I think you'll enjoy it.
Okay, yeah.
Uh, when I was about maybe 35 years old, of course, I had a fear of public speaking. You know, it's just something I tried to get out of. I didn't want to do it. Um, my editor called me and he said, "I've been called away by corporate and I have to give a speech to a civic club. You've got to fill in for me." And of course, I didn't want to let him down, but it was the worst day of my life. I had to go give a public speech. So I worked hard on my speech. I memorized it. And so it was a luncheon in a civic club, and I guess maybe there were 100 people there, and I was just sweating bullets. I was scared to death. I got up on the podium and I started my speech, and I was a little shaky. I was doing okay though, and in the front row, I saw this older gentleman, and he was sound asleep. He was just out. And I looked at him, and my subconscious, I think, started laughing and started telling me, look, this guy, he doesn't care you stutter. He doesn't he doesn't care what you're saying. He's just there. And so, you know, just go with it. And and I still see that man sometimes, and I wish I could thank him for going for going to sleep in the middle of my speech, because it taught me that 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 you know what I'm doing is not you know is not earth shattering. It's very common, and though I don't do it well, uh, I may be kind of unique because I still stutter and I still love to give public speaking speeches. So that's is something I've never I've forgotten, and I owe that old man a lot.
Oh, and I have not heard that story before. That is great.
Yeah,
Because I know people who have been in similar circumstances who would feel like, oh, I got to wake that guy up, and
right,
so just you took it a different direction. I've
right.
got to be curious. Almost certainly there was somebody else that the boss could have called to give that speech. Is there any indication that the boss kind of did that on purpose? I don't mean that he pretended that he had something else going on, but
You know,
why did
I
you
have,
do
I have wondered about that.
it?
Uh, I was, in one sense, I was proud he called on me uh, because he had confidence in me. He
Mhm.
showed confidence in me, uh, and and that's one reason I did it. I didn't want to let him down, and
Yeah.
so yeah, yeah. I've often wondered about that.
You think maybe he saw something in you that you weren't seeing in yourself, and he saw this as an opportunity for you to bring that out to yourself?
I think that's entirely possible. He was a good boss. He challenged me in other ways, and I think I always tried to come through for him. So I think that's good. Yeah.
Okay, okay. I think that is awesome,
Right.
and just is something to hold out for all of our audience. You've probably got folks listening, you've got somebody like that who did something for you. You have the opportunity to do something like that for somebody else. The subtitle for Medium Well is the journey from believing to believing in, and it's so important to believe in somebody or to have somebody believe in you.
Right.
For again, just for a little bit more context, I told people in the preview for the episode and the introduction, I may have misspoken that you started writing obituaries. You started writing sports.
I wrote my share of
You
obituaries
wrote
though too.
obituaries too.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and so we that's one of the things that's changed the newspaper business. It's paid obituaries now,
Right.
so I'm not sure where people cut their teeth on news stories. But the point here is you started on sports writing obituaries, uh, graduated to copy desk, became managing editor at was that at the press Scimitar was where you were managing editor?
The Knoxville News Sentinel.
Knoxville News Sentinel. I knew
Right.
the Knoxville News Sentinel connection. I couldn't
Right.
remember what it. So, for a lot of the folks listening here, they're local to the Knoxville area. So that was what time period was that? Just to kind of
That
set.
was 1985 through 95.
Okay.
Uh, and then I went to Evansville as the publisher up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's sort of all the way. I think all these papers were in the Scripps Howard family.
Correct. Yes.
And so, when you rise to publisher of a newspaper, the only place to go further up, at least at that time, would have been to join the corporate.
Right.
So you worked at every level,
Yes.
and you did that. How shall I say this? You did that as a stutterer, so obviously the stuttering did not hold you back career wise.
In some ways, I think the stuttering actually helped because it gave me empathy
Mm,
for the people who worked for me. I was not I was not a rabble rouser. I was not a hard charger. I just wanted everybody to do their job, and so it gave me an empathy. I can recall one time we had a reporter who had done a series, a very good series, and uh, a TV station wanted him to be part of a panel to explore the series Father. And he came to me and he said, "I can't do it. I can't go on TV. I'm scared to death. I will freeze. I can't do it."
mhm,
And I said, "Well, Okay, I'll be glad to do it for you. And I think he was kind of taken aback because he knew I stuttered, yet I was willing to backstop him in something he didn't want to do. So I think I got some credit for that, which I mean that's what you have to do. You know, you have to be a part of the team.
Mhm.
And so I, I was glad to, and I think it turned out okay.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds just great management approach there. In fact, it makes me think, um, and this is going to be a bridge into something else here in just a second as we talk about the books a little bit more. But the skill set for writing good copy, writing a good headline, writing an inverted pyramid story, it's a very different skill set than the set of managing people. Uh,
Exactly.
and, and you and I both know we're not going to name names here, but we know people who are excellent reporters, and we reward people by promoting them. And when we promote them into that editor position, they hate their jobs because they're
Right.
doing something that they were never trained to do.
Right.
So, for you, where did that come from? I detect your joy in all of what you were doing.
Yes. Yeah.
How did you go from I'm not just talking about the process about how did I get promoted. How did you develop the skill set to go from being a good newspaper reporter to being a good editor, a good manager? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes. Y- y- um, I guess at some point it clicked with me that uh, uh, while I thought I was a good writer, I needed to be a good manager too, and I needed to listen well, and you kind of do that if you are a person who stutters. You listen a lot, uh, and I think that helped in my management. The the One of the bigger challenges though was was when I went from writing for newspapers and managing for newspapers and then going into fiction writing. A lot of people think that's an easy jump. uh, if you're a writer, you're a writer. Well, that's not true. Um, when you write for a newspaper, you always have to tell and not show. When you are a fiction writer, you have to show and not tell. If you start uh, telling a lot of things, it turns in to exposition and it's boring. And so you have to show your story instead of really tell your story.
Mhm.
So in Paperboy, it's a very small book. It's 250 pages, but it took me, it's 50,000 words long. It took me 200,000 words to get the 50,000 words which I needed, and it took me 5 years. So I had to unlearn a lot of the stuff I learned about writing for newspapers.
Yeah. I could see where there'd be an unlearning involved there along with
Exactly.
the learning. Let me go ahead and show the books that we've been talking about here. Let's
Okay.
see here if I can share screen, click the right buttons here. We'll just show your website because that's got the three books right there at the beginning. So Paperboy was the first book. That one took
Right.
you 5 years.
Right.
And Copy Boy was the sequel. Man Boy has come out fairly recently. They're
Yes.
all following Victor Ballmer from was it an age 10 to age
Um,
17 to age 21? Am I right about that?
I think he was 11 in Paperboy, 17 in Copyboy, and 21 in Manboy.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Hmm.
And we're a little short of time, so I'm not going to go into it too much here. But one of the things that has been interesting from a publishing standpoint, that first book became a Newbery Award winner. And then this, not to be critical of the big publishers, but when you had the second book, the big publisher wasn't interested in it because they wanted the character to stay the same age, which was completely beside the point.
Well, that certainly surprised me and threw me for a loop. Paperboy was translated to 18 languages. It sold 250,000 copies. It was very successful. So I started on Copyboy, and I handed it to Random House, and they said, Vince, we love your book. We love your story, but there's a problem. We don't let our popular characters grow older. And my response was, well, that's not life. And my publisher's response was, well, it may not be life. It certainly is publishing, though. And so we found another publisher for Copyboy. And, but what my goal was to show a boy in transition from 11 years old to 17 to 21, and mainly how his attitudes changed toward his stuttering and toward life. I mean, that's how we grow, we change. And I'm still I'm just as proud of Man Boy as I am of Copyboy, although it didn't sell all that well, but that's okay. I don't care.
Well, and you independently published Man Boy to have more control over it. So
right.
that's a long tail kind of thing.
We had sold well, we had gotten offers for Man Boy, but they didn't want it to be a sequel, and they wanted to change the title, and they wanted this and that. And I said, no. I got to do what I've got to do. And so I found an independent publisher, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah. It's a whole different approach to publishing, which is more and more what's happening in publishing these days.
Right.
So, let's see. Man Boy's been out about a year. Am I right about that?
A year, yes. Yeah.
Okay. And so it's still got, as an independently published book, it's got a lot of life left in it. Folks do not realize that with traditional publishing, the 90-day window after it's published, that's about all the push that it's going to get.
Right. I'm finding I'm getting a lot more emails from readers now on Man Boy. It started out a little slow. For Paperboy, I got hundreds and hundreds of emails, and I tried to answer them all. And that's the reason I actually wrote Copyboy, was to try to answer all the questions readers had in Paperboy. And so I wrote Copyboy. And the reason I wrote Man Boy was purely selfish. I thought I owed a character named Ma'am. I thought I owed her this, and so I just had to write it.
Yeah. And there's more books inside you to come out. So this is how would I put it here? This is an ongoing kind of thing.
Yes, I'm thinking about a nonfiction book now, and I've got to learn a whole nother set of rules now. So, I'm working on that.
Let me probe that just a little bit, because I told Vince before we came on, folks, that he asked how long is our program. So ours is a 30-minute program that typically runs about 40 to 45 minutes.
Right.
We're just getting to some really good stuff here.
Right.
At a time when you are retired from the newspaper business,
right,
and a lot of folks at our age, I'm younger than you, but I'm in the same ballpark here.
Right.
It would be really easy to say, I've got a secure financial situation. I don't have to do this. I'm just going to watch movies. I'm gonna catch up on reading because I know you've got a TBR pile over there.
Right.
What is it that leads you? It's not just what leads you to keep writing. I understand that, but you're saying I've got a nonfiction book here, which means I've got to learn a whole bunch of other stuff.
Right.
What keeps you wanting to learn, to keep digging like that?
I wish I knew. I told my wife, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think I've ever gone on a vacation. When I'm on vacation, I'm thinking about a project, something I should be doing. I don't vacate well. I just have to be. I, I've got to be scratching my itch somehow, and so this is the way I do it. Uh, my my agent said the success of Paperboy came about because I gave no thought to who would publish it, what kind of genre it was, what the pluses and minuses were. I didn't think about any of that. I just told my story. I told my story the way I wanted to. I had no idea if anybody would read it, would purchase it. I didn't really care about that. I just knew I had to do it. Uh, I can never think of a time I didn't think about writing Paperboy. I just kind of always knew I would do it. And the day I retired, I started. And it's kind of very simple. But yeah, it's been a thrilling experience.
Mm-hmm. And folks, I got to say, one of the things that really impresses me as a writer is that the writing style of Paperboy is appropriate to an 11-year-old writing it. And then you see the maturity in the writing for Copyboy and again in Manboy. I mean, there is an evolution of writing style. So to me, that is a highly
Exactly.
skilled thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Folks, we
And
want to make sure you know how to find these things. Again, those of you who are on with us live on video, well, replays on video, you're seeing Vince's website crawling down there at the bottom. And I've also got a QR code, which will make it easy to find. So let's pull that up. There's Vince's picture at a newspaper, by the way. You're standing in front of a press, I think, right?
right. Yeah.
Yeah. Curious which newspaper that is.
I think that's the New Sentinel, as a matter of
New
fact.
Sentinel. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
I don't think they have those presses anymore.
Well, they have the presses, but they print about, I don't know, about 10 Gannett papers now, and so it's changed quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine. I would imagine. Well, this is a QR code for Vince's website. And then some folks just do everything on Amazon. So I've got a QR code there for Vince's books on Amazon. You can grab that off the screen also. And for folks who are on audio only, we'll have that in the show notes. So be sure you remember confidencecultivators.com. And you can find those show notes, links to everything that we talk about here, including the Amazon links. And so seemed like there was something. There's so much more that I wanted to ask Vince, but I'm just trying to think. There was one other thing not coming to me right now. So let me ramp up here to ask. There's almost always something that you wish that we had talked about that we didn't. Is there something like that you feel like we really should have dug into a little bit? What would your answer be on
Well, we've covered a lot of ground. I guess one thing that I would want to say is I speak at quite a few schools. I've spoken at I guess more than 200 schools in 25 or 26 states. Random House told me that as a Newbery author, you can charge $500, $750, $1,500 to go to a school and talk about your book. I have never charged the school a penny. I sometimes, if it's a long way off, I will take expenses, but I have never charged the school a penny or charged anybody anything if they have read my book and they ask me to come and to talk about it. I truly enjoy it. I love to hear the questions from readers because it explains my own book to me. It it makes me understand my book of so much better. That sounds odd. That's the way it works, though.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great insight, just the interaction with people.
Right.
I think sometimes I can never remember who to give proper credit for this. You'll probably recognize the quote, though. Somebody who said, "How do I know what I think until I write about it?"
Right. Yeah.
And so through the process of writing, it's a very much a self-discovery, self-understanding activity in and of itself.
Yes.
I can see where talking with readers about their perspective of it, it's just a great process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Well, Vince, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this conversation. And,
well,
you and I get together for coffee fairly regularly. I'm looking forward to more stories.
Good. And I'll try to see where you get your shirts. I'm going to get me one of those.
We can get your wife to talk to my wife, maybe.
Okay. All right.
I don't even know where she gets them, but she comes up with good ones. Well, hang out in the green room for just a second so I can thank you properly, and I'll tell folks about what's coming up next week.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, folks. So this was a great conversation. I hope that you enjoyed it. It wasn't just about writing, just about newspapering. There's a lot of wisdom there for just daily life. I'm taking a lot out of it, and I hope that you are too. Next week, we have coming up somebody who was just recently on. You might remember last Friday we had Shani Marston on. And even during that interview, we said, we've got to do another one of these. Well, she had an opening available, and I happen to have an opening. So this coming Friday, we're going to have Shani Marston on for part 2. We will dig some into her story, but we're going to go beyond that into what she is learning right now. And I think that's going to be useful to you here as a listener to the Alignment Show. Be sure and remember confidencecultivators.com so that you can get those show notes. I'll change the crawl to emphasize that. And of course, it's kind of up here in the corner anyway. Be sure and check out donking.com/books. All of this, of course, is aimed at helping you to live a more effective life. As our motto says, we want to help you to live your values so you can value your life. And having said that, we will see you next week right here on The Alignment Show. That's it for this week's episode of The Alignment Show. What has it inspired you to do in your own life? Whatever it is, take action now and take the first step. It will help you to talk with a friend about what you're thinking. Share confidencecultivators.com to spread the goodness. And remember to live your values and value your life. We will see you next week on The Alignment Show.